the audience for being late on starting. Got a brand new radio interview that started this morning, and we had a little trouble making connection, and then when we did, it was late. So anyway, excuses, but we'll move forward with the committee. First thing on the agenda, do we have bill request for bill introduction from committee members? Seeing none, do we have bill requests from anyone in the audience? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the agenda. And the first thing on the agenda is from our fiscal analyst, Mr. Luke Drury. We will have him go through the Kansas Water Office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee. My name is Luke Drury. I'm a senior fiscal analyst with the Kansas Legislative Research Department, and I will be going over the budget of the Kansas Water Office. I would note that Connie Owen, Director of the Water Office, is here with committee today, as well as Victoria Ashbury with the Water Office to answer any questions that you all may have. Standard with the budget analysis that you all have for the Water Office is the front page identifying the overall budget overview for 2023, 2024, and 2025. The Kansas Water Office is the water planning, policy, and coordination agency for the state. The agency, in conjunction with the Kansas Water Authority, develops water policies through open planning processes, facilitates the coordination of agencies' activities regarding water, and operates a raw water marketing program to ensure an adequate supply for citizens, municipalities, environment, and industries in the state. If we flip over to page 4, I will begin there. Excuse me. At the top of page 4 is a table of expenditures and financing for the Water Office. You will see each fiscal year along with buckets of expenditure categories along with financing. At the below that is a trend line of general fund expenditures for the Water Office. For the Kansas Water Office, SGF expenditures had increased from 2021 to 2022 when the 2022 legislature added $80 million SGF to pay off water supply storage debt for Big Hill, Clinton, and Hillsdale reservoirs. For 2023, SGF expenditures totaled $4.1 million. Of that amount, $3 million was expended to partially pay off water supply storage debt associated with Milford and Perry reservoirs, and SGF expenditures are estimated at $1 million and $1.4 million for FY 2024 and 2025, respectively. When we flip over to page 5, there's an examination of the Water Marketing Fund. Again, a 10-year trend line there. Under the Federal Water Supply Act of 1985, federal reservoirs constructed in Kansas for the purpose of flood control were authorized to include storage space for municipal and industrial water supplies. In 1961, the legislature provided financial assurance for the inclusion of water storage in the federal reservoirs constructed in the state. In 1974, the legislature passed the State Water Plant Storage Act, which authorized the agency to contract with water purchasers for the sale of water from any reservoir included in the Kansas Water Marketing Program. The Water Marketing Fund was created in 1991 by the 1991 legislature. Revenue for the water marketing program is generated from the sale of water supplied under contracts with public water suppliers and industries from state-owned storage and federal lakes purchased from the U.S. Corps of Engineers. The price of water is set annually according to an established formula that is not negotiable. The fund is then used to meet the state's contractual water storage obligations for the federal government through transfers to the State Conservation Storage Water Supply Fund. Underneath the 10-year trend, you will see a more granular view, 2021-2022. Left side, green bars are revenues. The right side, red columns are expenditures, and the yellow trend line that traverses those columns are ending balances. I would again note that those are snapshots in time as of June 30 of any given year. That's what the fund closed with. The Water Marketing Fund expenditures decreased in 2023 because the agency decreased expenditures from the fund for debt service, interest, and principal payments when compared to FY 2022 expenditures. Instead, the SGF was used in 2023 to pay debt service towards certain water supply storage debts. It is also notable that the 2023 legislature appropriated $52 million from the SGF in 2023 to the Office of the State Treasurer for the purpose of retiring water supply storage debts associated with Milford and Perry reservoirs. Once those debts are retired, the Kansas Water Office will no longer have outstanding debt payments for water. Flipping over to page 6. for water supply storage. For 24 and 25, the agency estimates expenditures to normalize from this fund without adding SGF monies. Despite the water supply storage debts being retired, the Kansas Water Office has ongoing contracts with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for operations and maintenance. In addition to increasing expenditures from the fund, the agency estimates increasing transfers from the Water Marketing Fund to the State Conservation Storage Water Supply Fund in 2025. Transfers out of the Water Marketing Fund total $5.9 million for 2025. Increasing expenditures along with those increasing transfers from the fund will reduce any balances in the fund by 2025. And you can see that on the table on page 5. When we flip over onto page 7, that is the beginning of the 2024 analysis. Again, the table at the top is a breakdown of the legislative approved and agency requests. The numbers or lines on the left side correspond with the narratives below. Subsequent to the 2023 session, there were several adjustments that were made to the $50.9 million appropriated to the Water Office in 24. These adjustments do change the current year approved without any legislative action required. Item number 1, SGF reappropriation. The agency carried over 221 SGF and unspent monies from 23 into 24. Item number 2, State Water Plan Fund reappropriations. The agency carried over $3.4 million in State Water Plan Fund and unspent monies from 23 to 24. The agency requests a revised estimate of $54.8 million, including $1.1 million SGF in 2024. That's an increase of about $500,000, including $10,000 SGF above the agency's approved budget. The revised estimate includes $2 million and $10,000 SGF, $2 million State Water Plan Fund for the following for the following supplemental request. I apologize. Item number 3 is the pay plan shortfall. The revised estimate includes about $10,000 SGF in 2024 to account for the shortfall in appropriations for the legislative pay plan in 2023 as it relates to Senate Bill 25. The 2023 legislature appropriated $120 million, including $46 million SGF, across all state agencies to provide the salary adjustments for 2024 based on the Department of Administration's market survey study. This total amount was short by approximately $11.8 million, including $11.4 million SGF statewide in 2024. To account for this, the State Finance Council prorated the agency distribution for the available appropriations by approximately 20%. For the Kansas Water Office, a supplemental appropriation of roughly $10,000 SGF in 24 is required to achieve the intended effect of the legislative pay plan as outlined in Senate Bill 2025. Item number 4, State Water Plan Fund injection dredging. The Kansas, flipping over onto page 8, the Kansas Water Office indicates that $2 million SGF for water injection dredging at Tuttle Creek Reservoir because it was lapsed in 2023. The funding was previously appropriated for FY 2023 and was not expended. The agency did not have reappropriation authority for those particular funds to roll into 2024, and as a result of not being expended, the funding was lapsed. The agency requests this funding be added back into the agency's budget for 2024. Absent those supplemental requests, the revised estimate does include a decrease of $1.5 million in expenditures. Item number 5, State Water Plan Fund transfers. The agency's revised estimate in 2024 includes transferring $1.5 million State Water Plan Fund to the Department of Agriculture. Specifically, the transfer would be for the Kansas Reservoir Protection Initiative. The transfer would result in decreased expenditures for the Kansas Water Office, totaling to $1.5 million, while also increasing expenditures in the Department of Agriculture by the same amount in 2024. All other adjustments, item number 6, the agency requests to add 3 FTE positions in FY 2024 above the agency's approved number. The position increase includes 0.5 FTE positions for Water Supply Contracts Program and 2.5 FTE positions for the Water Planning and Administration Program. There is no increase in funding requested in association with these FTEs. The governor recommends expenditures of $39 million, including $1.1 million SGF and $12.4 million State Water Plan Fund. That's a decrease of $15.8 million, or 28.8% below the agency's revised estimate. The decrease is attributable to the recommendation. The decrease is attributable to for the governor recommending to transfer $15.8 million State Water Plan Fund from the Kansas Water Office to the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and Environment in 2024. This adjustment aligns with action taken by the State Finance Council on November 13, 2023. Absent that transfer, the governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate. So item number 7, those additional state water plant fund transfers. The governor recommends additional state water plant fund transfers from the Water Office to the Department of Agriculture and Health and Environment, totaling $15.8 million in 2024. Again, that adjustment aligns with State Finance Council action taken. The recommendation transfers $10 million from the Water Office to the Department of Agriculture. That includes $7 million for the Rattlesnake Creek and Quivira National Wildlife Refuge impairment, including sub-basin water resources management and water transition assistance programs. $3 million is also for dam construction and rehabilitation. The recommendation also transfers $5.8 million from the Water Office to the Department of Health and Environment for water quality initiatives, including contamination remediation, total maximum daily load initiatives, surface water trash removal, and small town infrastructure support. That recommendation would decrease expenditures in the Water Office by $15.8 million, while increasing expenditures, flipping over to page 9, for the Department of Agriculture by $10 million, and increasing expenditures for the Health and Environment by $5.8 million in 2024. Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions, or I can continue.
Questions on fiscal year 24? Go ahead and continue, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 10, there's a change from FY 2024, change from actual expenditures comparison for you all. The agency estimates revised expenditures of $54.8 million, including $1.1 million SGF in 24. That's an all funds increase of roughly $44.6 million, or 437%, including an SGF decrease of $2.9 million, or 72.1%, from 2023 actual expenditures. Much of that change from actual FY 2023 expenditures and the agency's revised estimate is related to the enactment of 2023 Senate Sub for House Bill 2302. Senate Sub for House Bill 2302 created 2 new funds, the Water Technical Assistant Fund and the Water Projects Grant Fund, to be administered by the Water Office. Expenditures from those funds are $5 million and $12 million respectively in 2024. In addition, the bill transferred $35 million State General Fund to the Water Plan Fund, and the 2023 Legislature appropriated an additional $18 million Water Plan Fund to the Water Office in 2024. That increased funding, along with the reappropriations from the State Water Plan Fund from 23 into 24, account for those changes from actual expenditures that you're seeing in FY 2024. When we flip over to page 11, that's the beginning of the FY 2025 analysis. Again, same general format as before. That is to say that the top table shows agency's request without major changes, lines for enhancements and other changes, and then lines for the governor. Again, the numbers on the left-hand side correspond with the narratives below. The agency requests 25 expenditures of $39 million. That includes $1.4 million SGF for 2025. That's an all-funds decrease of $15.8 million, or 28.8%, including an SGF increase of roughly $221,000, or 19.6% above the 24 revised estimate. The request includes $218,000 SGF for the following enhancements request. Item number 1, capital outlay for new FTE positions. The agency requests roughly $9,000 SGF for computers, monitors, and equipment for the requested 2 new FTE positions for FY 2025. And then item number 2, the funding for those new FTE positions. The agency requests $209,000 and 2 FTE positions in the Water Planning and Administration Program for 2025. The agency indicates that one FTE would provide technical expertise in data compilation and analysis, water supply model development and interpretation, and other duties supporting water supply analysis. The agency also indicates that the second FTE position would increase the overall awareness of the Kansas water resources through the implementation of the Kansas Water Plan education, communication, and public outreach related actions, items, and priorities. Absent those enhancement requests, the request does include a decrease of $16.7 million. That includes $221 from the general fund and expenditures. Item number 3, those SGF reappropriations that occurred in 2024 will not reoccur in 2025. And so the agency is planning to spend those monies, not roll it into the new year. Item number 4, State Water Plan Fund reappropriations. Again, those reappropriations totaling $3.4 million from 23 into 24, flipping over to page 12, will not reoccur for 2025. That is to say the agency is estimating expending those monies and not rolling those into 2025. Item number 5, State Water Plan Fund transfers. The agency estimates transfers to other state agencies totaling $14.7 million for 2025. That's an increase of $13.3 million above the 2024 revised estimate. The increase in transfers to other state agencies would result in decreasing expenditures in the Water Office by the same amount. This is related to the 2022 Legislature appropriating additional $18 million State Water Plan Fund to the Water Office in 2024. That increased funding is estimated to be expended by the agency in 2024. For 2025, the agency is requesting to maintain those appropriations, but to transfer most of those monies to other state agencies as opposed to expending them. This will show as decreased expenditures for the Water Office and increasing expenditures for other state agencies. The Governor concurs with the agency's 2025 request and recommends no changes. Mr. Chair, I can take questions here, or I can continue on.
Committee, do we have questions? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So certainly makes sense to me that these transfers occur to other agencies. Will those agencies be able to see any increase in FTE, or just be expected to handle those expenditures within existing staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, to answer the question, when we get to the other budgets, so environment and agriculture, you will see those transfers in there. There are no associated FTEs associated with those transfers to those other state agencies, as you will see in the budget analysis of those budgets. So this would just be money transferred from the Water Office to those other state agencies.
I do have some questions, but I'm going to hold those until you are finished, Mr. Drury. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just point out for the committee on page 13, there is an examination of what was requested by the agency in regard to supplemental and enhancement requests versus what the governor recommended, along with a narrative to describe those. I also want to point your attention to page 15 of the document. This is a special topics. Specifically, this goes through 2023 Senate Sub for House Bill 2302. It talks about what the bill did, creating of the new funds, the transfers going in to the water plan fund as a whole from the general fund. In addition to that, there's some more detail outlining those transfers from the Water Office to other state agencies. When you flip over to page 16, you'll see a small table there, and that shows what the governor recommended water plan fund transfers are from the state water office, or out of the state water office, excuse me, and to other state agencies. As you will note, or I will note here, that these are net zero changes. So that is to say that the amount of money that is coming out of the state water plan fund from the Water Office is equal to the money that is going into the Department of Health and Environment and Agriculture, along with the University of Kansas. University of Kansas because of the Geological Survey. And then, Mr. Chair, I will also just note, with all agencies that have multiple programs, you will find on page 17 and then through the end of the document a table overview of expenditures by fiscal year, by program, along with FTE positions requested and recommended as well. So, Mr. Chair, that will end my presentation, and as I indicate, Connie Owen, Director, and then Victoria Ashbury, Public Relations from the Water Office, is here to answer any questions that you all may have.
Do you have questions of our fiscal analyst? I'm going to ask you several questions, Mr. Drury, and you can then pick and choose if you want to answer any of them or defer to the agency. The reason I ask them now is give the agency sort of a heads up. I noticed that there were 19 FTEs in 23, and then in 24 they want 3 more, and then in the very next year they want 2 more. So that's a total of 5 increase in FTEs over 2 years, which grows the size of government. I did notice, interestingly, that in 24 they did not request any additional funding, according to page 8, for the 3 FTEs, but then they did the following year. Additionally, I would like to have a little more information regarding the contracts with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that is mentioned on page 6. On page 5, the ending balance is the lowest in 25 of any year that we have showing on that graph. And I did notice again in fiscal year 25, they asked for over $200,000 for 2 positions, which looks like a pretty good salary to me. That's about $104,000 per position. And then the final question was on the reappropriation, or not reappropriation, but the fact that there was some money appropriated in fiscal year 23 that lapsed in 23, and that's for the water injection dredging. I'm looking at page 13, committee. So I would be curious as to why the money that was appropriated in 23 was not spent, which I'm not saying that an agency needs to just spend money because they have it, but why should we give it back to them? So any of these questions you wish to answer, Mr. Drury, jump right in. If you wish to answer none of them, well, the agency will step up here in just a moment and answer probably all of them for them.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can answer some of those. The first question on the FTEs on page 7, as you indicated, item number 6, those are 3 FTE positions being added. The agency does indicate that they already have funding within their budget for those, so it would not be an increase in expenditure, rather just a increase of authorized FTE positions. For FY 2025, as you did indicate, that's an additional 2 FTE positions that the agency does not have funding for. So that's why the funding and the FTE statistic is in there together. I would also note that the portion for salaries and wages does include fringe benefit costs as well. So typically you can estimate about 23 to 26% of a total spend on salaries and wages to go to fringe benefit costs. So then about 80 to 85% of whatever that number is what the base salary would be, typically based on the cost indices for salaries and wages and fringe benefits that are out there. In regard to page number 5, the ending balances that you noted about, I did ask the agency about that. They will likely be able to give a better response than I. But this particular fund, the Water Marketing Fund, was used to pay down water supply storage debts. Once the Milford and Perry Reservoir debts are expired, those are with the state treasurer's office and not with the water office. The contracts for water supply currently will be gone, to my knowledge. There will be no more water supply storage contracts that are necessary. With that being said, though, there are still ongoing contracts with the Corps of Engineers, and to my understanding, that's where those expenditures and increased expenditures are coming from operations and maintenance, not specifically for the water storage supply, but I do believe the agency will be able to answer that question better than I. In regard to the Water Plan Fund dredging project, the Water Office typically does have reappropriation authority for each line item for general fund and for state water plan fund within their budget. However, and I can't speak to why this particular line item did not have that. This particular line item did not have reappropriation authority, and so therefore when it was unspent as of June 30 of that fiscal year, any amount over $100 typically is how the reappropriation authority would allow them to retain that. Instead, they did not have that reappropriation authority, and so the money was just automatically lapsed. According to the agency, that should have had reappropriation authority, and they request that money to be back in. But why the reappropriation authority was not included in the first place or not expended, I cannot speak to that.
Committee, any questions of fiscal analysts? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Drury, for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, next we have Pauline Owen, who is the director of the Kansas Water Office. Is Director Owen. And primarily, because we are in a budget hearing, we would prefer for you to answer budget questions, provide any information to the committee that you think is pertinent for our deliberations on your budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Connie Owen, the director of the Kansas Water Office, and I will address the question about the Corps contracts, but with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'd like to defer the other questions to our budget expert, Victoria Asbury.
That's fine by me.
And the specific concern about the Corps contracts is that addressing the ongoing obligations that we have under our contracts with the federal government, with the Corps of Engineers. When we pay for the money we have, the water we have under contract, so we have contract for X amount of storage, when we pay for that, we get control of that water, but it also triggers our obligation to help pay operation and maintenance. And under our contracts, that is ongoing. So even once we have paid the debt that we owe for the storage, we have an ongoing obligation that is under our contract with the federal government to help with operation and maintenance of those reservoirs. So it's there because we have an obligation to the Corps under our contract.
And is the contract renewed annually? How long is the contract for?
These contracts are varying lengths. Some of them were 40 years, some were decades, because these were formed a long time ago at different times. Fortunately, thank you very much to the legislature and leadership of Senator Fagg, our obligations to the Corps to pay for these contracts is now covered and will be zero. The final payment is now under investment with the State Treasurer's Office because the interest rates on the existing contract that we owe were lower than the interest rates the money could earn. So the legislature set the money aside to pay these debts. It's under investment, it's earning money so that it can be used in the future to pay these debts, but will have earned money in the meantime. And the sooner we can pay that off, the more obviously that we're saving over time. As with any debt that you pay ahead of time, we're saving on a lot of interest. But once that is done, then our obligation to the Corps to pay for storage will be zero. We will remain responsible, however, to help pay for operations and maintenance.
Your kudos to Senator Fagg make the rest of the committee feel inferior to.
You all helped approve it, so kudos go to all of you. A lot of people worked on that.
Good recovery.
So
if you do need to hand the mic off to someone else to answer additional questions.
thank you, sir. Yes, I'd like to introduce Victoria Asbury, who is our Policy and Governmental Affairs Manager.
Thank you, Connie, and good morning, committee. I'll answer some of the rest of the questions to the best of my ability. I'll start with the FTE increase for fiscal year 2023. The first thing I want to note about the Water Office's FTE is that the number that you see is the number that we have budgeted per year. So we don't include non-budgeted vacant positions in that number. So for fiscal year 2023, as many of you will remember, House Bill 2302 established 2 new grant programs within the Kansas Water Office. As part of the fiscal note for that bill, we did state that we would require 2 additional positions, but we would use vacant, unbudgeted positions. So we were authorized for those positions, but we hadn't ever had the money to fill them. House Bill 2302 did designate funding for those positions. So the increase in fiscal year 2023 for 2 of those is due to us having money for those positions, not necessarily because we were going above our authorized number for fiscal year 23. Or fiscal year 24, excuse me. And then for fiscal year 25, Luke did note that the, oh, of course, yeah.
My math says the difference between 19 and 22 is 3.
Correct.
And you said 2.
Correct. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one too. I just wanted to make sure that we covered the 2 that were related to House Bill 2302. The third position, again, as Luke noted, we are not, we had already budgeted that position, but we, as I mentioned, the Water Office notes budgeted positions in that the FTE number. We've recently made that transition in fiscal year 22 from reporting authorized positions to budgeted positions. And when we made that transition, we accidentally omitted an FTE. So we had the money, but we forgot to report the FTE or accidentally omitted the FTE in fiscal year 23, so it wasn't reflected. So we have those 2 for House Bill 2302, and then 1 that we admitted, but again, the funding was already approved for fiscal year 24, so that's why you don't see a funding increase.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for fiscal year 25, Luke did note that the salary amount does include fringe benefits, and Luke is correct, each of one of those salaries is about $75,000 and then plus fringe benefits. So that puts us at about $200,000 for that total salary enhancement request for fiscal year 25. And I can, are there any questions on the FTE, or I can answer the question on water injection dredging?
I would ask you to continue.
Great.
Answering questions of the chair, and then we'll pepper you with additional questions.
Great, sounds good. So to add on to what Connie has noted about the water injection dredging, that is a partnership with the Corps of Engineers. The money was appropriated in fiscal year 21 and 22. The money was not spent because as our partnership with the Corps, they were still working through their process of whether we're going to purchase the equipment or rent the equipment to perform the water injection dredging. And so the Corps wasn't quite ready to receive the funds from us, and that's why the funds weren't expended. And as Luke noted, we did not have reappropriation authority, and so it was lapsed. The Corps is ready to move forward, so we are requesting that those funds be reappropriated back to the water injection dredging line in the state water plan fund.
million is the correct amount?
It is, yes. That's how much the legislature appropriated between fiscal year 21 and 22.
I got that. That's what we appropriated, but is that what the cost is going to be?
Yes, that is our cost share requirement with the Corps.
So it didn't go up
It did not.
time. All right.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe that was all the questions that the committee had, so I'm happy to stand for further questions.
Committee, do you have questions of Mrs. Asbury? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. How much is the federal government's portion of that? If we're doing our two, what are they putting into it?
Yeah, they are contributing $4.5 million for water injection dredging.
Okay. Follow-up question?
Absolutely.
On page 8, you talk about $3 million for dam construction and rehab. Is that state-owned dams?
Correct. So on page 8, that's discussing the transfer from our House Bill 2302 line item to the Department of Agriculture. So I don't want to misspeak and provide too much information, but so yes, I would prefer that question be directed to the Department of Agriculture because I don't want to misspeak.
Any further questions of Mrs. Asbury? All right, and that is a different name from what I had known you as previously.
Correct. Yes, sir. I got married in August.
August 15th, correct?
No, sir.
Well, that's my anniversary. I just thought maybe it would be the
That would, it could be.
but it's not. Hopefully he knows. All right, thank you for
Thank you.
the committee and answering questions. Committee, seeing nothing further as it relates to the Kansas Water Office, we will move forward on the agenda with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and we are just looking at the Environment Division, which is a little bit different than what we're used to as far as not having an entire agency. Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct. This is a little bit different from the other budgets. Really different from any other budgets within the state. That Kansas Department of Health and Environment is one agency. With that being said, though, it is budgeted out with the health side and then with the environment side. So this, for the intents and purposes here, this is just for the Division of Environment, which is a division within the larger Department of Health and Environment. I would note that Leo Henning, Deputy Secretary of Environment, is here with us today in committee and may be able to answer any questions that the committee may have. So whereas typically we would have an examination within a table, this is the programmatic breakview of Division of Environment. This top line, or the top table that you will see, is a trend line over the last 10 years or so of expenditures within the Division of Environment, along with statutory basis program goals, and then a little bit of a narrative of the different things the Division of Environment does. The Division of Environment protects the environment and public health through compliance, enforcement, and proactive activities. The division includes the Bureaus of Waste Management, Air, Water, Environmental Remediation, Environmental Field Services, that includes the Office of the Director of Environment, and Health and Environment Laboratories. I will begin, though, on page 46, so just one page over. The agency is estimating Division of Environment expenditures for revised 2024 of $78 million. That includes $2.4 million general fund. That's an all funds decrease of $71.1 million, or 47.7% below the FY 2024 approved amount. The agency's revised estimate includes the following adjustments: State Water Plan Fund reappropriations. The agency's estimate includes State Water Plan Fund reappropriations of $1.5 million. That's unspent monies from 2023 that rolled into 2024. Pay plan shortfall, I will note this is an agency supplemental request. As noted with the the Water Office, the revised estimate includes about $20,000 SGF in 24 to account for the shortfall in appropriations for that legislated pay plan from 2023 as enacted by Senate Bill 25. The next bullet there is abandoned mined land reclamation fund. The agency's FY 2024 revised estimate includes an increase of $2.4 million. That's all federal funds for contractual services in the remediation program to aid in, and then we'll flip over to page 27, the restoration of land and water resources that have been degraded by adverse effects of the coal mining practices. Next item, labs to the Public Health Division. The Division of Environment's 2024 revised estimate includes a reduction of $83 million all funds. That includes $2 million general fund and a reduction of 107 FTE positions for the Health and Environment laboratories. As a part of an agency-wide reorganization effort, the agency lab program is now going to be reflected in Division of Public Health. That reorganization effort includes all lab expenditures. That includes $30.9 million federal ARPA monies for the building of a new lab facility here downtown in Topeka. The Waste Management Agency's FY 2024 revised estimate includes an increase of roughly $725,000, all from special revenue funds, and an increase of 4.4 FTE positions in the Bureau of Waste Management. That increase is mostly attributable to base salary expenditures along with fringe benefits rates because the agency's request does include hiring additional environmental specialists and temporary unclassified positions. Air quality. The agency's 2024 revised estimate includes an increase of $328,000, roughly, all from special revenue funds, and an increase of 2 FTE positions for the Bureau of Air Quality in 2024. That increase is attributable to those base salary expenditures along with fringe benefit rates because the agency is requesting to hire 2 additional engineering associates. The increase is also attributable to increased estimates for contractual services. Specifically, the agency is estimating higher expenditures for temporary staffing and attorney and lawyer fees in 2024. For water, the agency's 2024 revised estimate includes an increase of $1.1 million, including 27,000 SGF, and an increase of 5.68 FTE positions for the Bureau of Water 24. That increase is mostly attributable to those base salary expenditures along with fringe benefit rates because, as with the other divisions, the agency's request does include hiring additional staff, including an environmental scientist, professional engineer, geology associate, database manager, and an engineering technician. The agency's 2024 revised estimate for remediation includes an increase of roughly $690,000, including about 93,000 SGF, and an increase of 4.5 FTE positions for the Bureau of Environmental Remediation. Same with the other areas that we have just discussed. That increase is mostly attributable to those base salaries and also fringe benefits that are associated because the agency is requesting to hire additional staff, including environmental compliance and regulatory specialists, and environmental data management specialists, and administrative positions. For field services, the agency's 24 revised estimate includes an increase of roughly $150,000, including about $45,000 SGF. That's an increase of half FTE position for the Bureau of Environmental Field Services. That increase is mostly attributable to contractual services. Specifically, the agency is estimating increased expenditures for other professional fees. The small town infrastructure, the agency's 2024 revised estimate includes an increase of $5 million, all federal funds from the Small Town Infrastructure Program. That provides grants to support technical assistance and drinking water and sewer system upgrades to towns with less than 500 in population. Those funds were included in the $37.4 million in the discretionary ARPA monies that was approved by the State Finance Council on December 21 of 2022. A total of $10 million was awarded to this agency, and $5 million is estimated to be spent in the current year in 2024. When we flip over to page 48, the agency's revised estimate also includes 398.2 FTE positions for the Division of Environment. That's an overall net decrease of 89.8 FTE positions below the approved number. The decrease is attributable to the health labs moving over to the Division of Public Health, and that is partially offset by the division requesting 17.18 FTE positions across all other programs within the division. The governor does concur with the agency's 2024 revised estimate for the Division of Environment and recommends additional transfers from the Water Office totaling $5.8 million from the Water Plan Fund for water quality initiatives. The governor recommends those transfers totaling $1.5 million for contamination remediation, $1 million for total maximum daily load initiatives, $50,000 for surface water trash removal, and $3.2 million for the small town infrastructure support. Mr. Chair, I can answer questions or I can move forward with FY 2025.
Go ahead and move forward with FY.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The agency is requesting Division of Environment expenditures in 25 of $89.4 million. That's $12.5 million SGF, including $12.5 million SGF. That is an all funds increase of $11.5 million, including 14.7% above the revised estimate, and the items below are why. Those first two items, livestock waste management, I would note this is an agency enhancement request. The agency is requesting 210,000 SGF for livestock waste management for FY 2025. The agency indicates that the funding would allow them to hire additional contract engineers and add additional contract clerical services. Contract engineers would be used to review proposed plans for confined animal feeding operations. Contracted clerical services would be used to assist the agency in converting old paper documentation to electronic formats. The next item there, small town infrastructure assistance. I would note this is also an agency enhancement request. The agency is requesting $10 million SGF to support technical assistance and drinking water and sewer systems for upgrades with towns with a population of less than 500 for 25. The agency notes that towns in Kansas with a population under 1,000 are the most likely to have drinking water and sewer systems fall out of compliance with the state and federal requirements. The agency notes that the funding would grant relief to towns having issues arising from deteriorating drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. And I would also note that in addition to this enhancement, there is that $5 million in ARPA funds that the agency plans to use for the same purpose in 2025. For contamination remediation, the agency is requesting $500,000 in state water plan fund transfers from the Water Office for contamination remediation for 2025. That transfer would be in addition to an appropriation totaling $1.1 million and result in estimated expenditures for contamination remediation at $1.6 million for 2025. The agency indicates that those funds would be used for emergency response activities where there is an immediate danger to human health and or environment and provide alternative water supplies to citizens that have that impacted drinking water. The next item, local environmental protection program. The agency is requesting $400,000 water plan fund transfers from the Water Office for local environmental protection costs in 25. That transfer would be in addition to an appropriation of $250,000 and would result in total expenditures of $650,000 for local environment protection programs in 2025. The agency indicates the funding would allow the state to provide financial resources to counties for on-site wastewater systems upgrades and replacements, as well as resources for private water well testing. The agency further indicates that funding for this program has not been appropriated since 2012. The 23 legislature appropriated funding for the program in 24, and the agency request includes continuing those appropriations for the program in 2025. For surface water trash removal, the agency is requesting $50,000 in water plan fund transfers from the Water Office for surface trash removal in 2025. The transfer would be the only source of funding for the program in 25 because the agency's request does not include a direct appropriation for that purpose. The agency is indicating funding would go towards a pilot effort to remove trash and keep trash out of Kansas rivers. When we flip over to page 49, Ark River ditch lining. The agency is requesting $1 million in state water plan fund transfers from the Water Office for drinking water protection in 2025. This transfer would be in addition to the requested appropriation totaling $800,000 and result in estimated expenditures of $1.8 million for drinking water protection in 25. For the transfer specifically, the agency is indicating the funding would allow the agency to line about 20 miles of Amazon ditch in Kearney and Finney counties. The agency indicates that the source of pollutants found in the Arkansas River emanating from Colorado, and those pollutants are interacting with traditionally good quality groundwater here in Kansas. These pollutants are contaminating traditionally good groundwater as a result of leakage from those irrigation ditches that distribute river water to upland areas. The funding would allow the agency to line or seal a portion of those ditches to help to limit the amount of contaminants that leak into the existing groundwater in the area. Aquifer recharge basins. The agency is requesting $500,000 in water plan fund transfers from the Water Office for aquifer recharge basins in 25. That transfer would be the only source of funding for the program in 25, again, because the agency's request does not include a direct appropriation for that purpose. The agency indicates funding would go towards initiatives that encourage the infiltration and percolation of high-quality rainwater into poor quality groundwater through the development of artificial playas, upland detention terraces, and depressions with Hickenbottom injection wells. The agency indicates this initiative is a long-range initiative and that it will require multiple years of study. For groundwater quality monitoring, the agency is requesting $1.1 million state water plan fund transfers from the Water Office for total maximum load initiatives and use attainability analysis for 25. That transfer would be in addition to a requested appropriation of roughly $390,000 and result in expenditures totaling $1.5 million for total maximum daily load initiatives and use attainability analysis in 2025. The agency indicates the funding would reestablish an ambient groundwater quality monitoring program in the state. The agency indicates the groundwater quality monitoring program would, item number 1, collect baseline data to help identify areas of the state where groundwater quality is already at risk of exceeding health standards or allow the detention of future deterioration. And item number 2, it would create a public data platform that helps to integrate groundwater quality data across agencies that links existing Kansas Geological Survey water databases. RAPS effectiveness monitoring. The agency is requesting $200,000 in water plan fund transfers from the Water Office for watershed restoration and protection strategies for 2025, also known as RAPS. This transfer would be in addition to a requested appropriation of $1 million and result in total expenditures of $1.2 million for RAPS in 25. The agency does indicate the funding would focus outsourced monitoring efforts to collect water quality data in an intensive manner to better evaluate the true impact of watershed practice investments that are currently being implemented. The agency's 25 request includes 398.2 FTE positions for the Division of Environment, and that is equal to the agency's revised estimate in 24. The governor does concur with the agency's request in 2025. And then, Mr. Chair, I would note on the back page here, 27, similar with the Water Office, and you will see this with the Department of Agriculture as well in their budget, a special topic section, again, outlining 2023 Senate sub for House Bill 2302, which created those new funds for the Water Office in addition to increasing transfers from the general fund to the water plan fund. And then this shows what the governor's recommended appropriation is for each one of those line items, the governor's recommendation of transfers into each one of those line items, and then what the overall net expenditures would be for the governor's recommendation for FY 2025 for these initiatives dealing with state water plan fund monies. Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions, or as I indicated, Leo Henning from the Division of Environment is here with us in committee today and may be able to answer questions that you all may have.
Committee, do you have questions of fiscal analyst Mr. Drury? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Drury, and this may be better for the agency, but I'm interested in looking at the money from the small town infrastructure assistance along with the money that was provided in HB 2302 to the water technical assistance and water project grants fund. Are we talking about different size communities that would get those funds, and how might those be working together?
Mr. Chair, Senator, to answer your question, I would need to dig a little bit further. Perhaps the agency would be able to answer here and now, but I'll certainly look into that and follow up.
Mr. Drury, it's a little difficult to follow the bouncing ball here. You mentioned on page 47, at least 47 of what I have in front of me, which I guess is yes, it's the same, that there is a reduction of 107 FTE positions because of restructuring, and then we see there are several requests for increase in FTEs, and when we look at the box on page 46, it shows 381 FTEs in fiscal year 23, increases to 398. So I don't follow how the restructuring works, and maybe that's a question for Director Henning, and there are several increase or requests for additional taxpayer money increases with these FTE positions. Can you elaborate on that at all, or help us understand the restructuring and why, if it says 107 reduction, then oops, by the way, we're going to add in more?
Yes, Mr. Chair. As indicated on page, I believe it is, 48 up at the top. Overall, it is a decrease of 89.8 positions, but that is offset because of those increases. And I understand following the bouncing ball, as you indicated. What I can do is put together a table which would show more of a visualization that can show the reduction from the public health side, FTEs, and then the increases in those other program areas with a line that would show what that net total would be. It's still a net decrease, but as you indicated, part is going off to the Division of Health, and then more is being added to all those other program areas within the division. So I can get a table of that, a better visual representation of that to assist the committee. If that's what you're looking for, I can certainly do that.
I would appreciate that. That would be beneficial for us to understand because we have part of one agency, the environmental.
Yep. I can do that, Mr. Chair.
Right? And I think that was the primary question that I had was the FTEs and then all the increased funding. Oh, I did have a question regarding the Arkansas River. You said that Colorado is just causing all kinds of pollution problems. Maybe that wasn't your words, but you indicated that they could line or seal a portion of the ditches to eliminate what is the distance that they could line or seal? Do you have information? If you do not, that would potentially be something for Director Henning, and that's on page 49, committee.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The agency indicated in their request that it would line about 20 miles. Now, in regard to where those miles are located, it's across a couple of different counties, Kearney and Finney, but in particular, the exact locations, I do not know. I can certainly look into that and answer, but it would be about 20 miles.
All right, thank you. Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And there again, I don't know if this question is appropriate at this point in time, but you were talking about the 20 miles. It's in Kearney and Finney County, and the water is coming from Colorado. We have Hamilton County. Before, I would think you would want to stop it right after the border, which is Hamilton County, before we get into Kearney and Finney. Maybe the agency can come back and tell me. I don't see the logic to that.
Great question. We trust the agency will answer that question for us when they make their presentation. Additional questions, Senator McGinn.
And I don't need an answer today. This is probably for the agency, but on that line of the contamination that the Colorado's doing and why they're doing it and how it's happening, I was just wondering if we're looking into any legal measures about that, because in my opinion, they are not meeting the agreement of the compact for bringing the water back. They are reusing it and making sure we have contaminated water by the time it gets here. So I would just like to find out if we're looking into that. Thank you.
Great question. Appreciate that. Mr. Drury, I don't see any additional questions. We will go ahead and get started with Director Henning and see how much ground he can cover in the next about 5 minutes. And then we may need to bring you back to figure out where we can further reduce your budget. I think that's your focus. Director Henning, welcome to the committee.
Well, thank you, Chairman Peck and committee members. Always a pleasure to be here in front of you. I did write down the questions. I do want to point out there is a PowerPoint that we provided you. I'm not going to go through it. I was told it's too long. And so I'm going to highlight and respond to the questions that I heard. And I think I can address most of them here in 5 minutes. And if I need to come back tomorrow, it's fine. So the first question I had was, how does the money on the small town, how's that all working together? And so I'll go back. Initially, there was $10 million of ARPA funds that were made available to the agency to help the small town infrastructure for drinking water and wastewater. We put that out for applications. We had 10 million and we received $85 million worth of requests. So that first 10 million was spent immediately. Through the House Bill 2302, we were able to receive an additional 3.2 million for that initiative because we knew we had the demand was there. So we were able to get 3.2 million out of state water plan to address the next group of the 85 million requests. We took the concern of that need for these small towns to the governor, and she saw the need also. So she included $10 million of state general fund into our budget for next year. So that's how it all works. We haven't changed the parameters. All the money is always for the small towns that really can't afford to go through the traditional SRF loan program because they're so small they can't pay a loan back. So anyway, but that's the target. We also are targeting those small towns that have environmental compliance issues, and they're so small that they don't have the means to address their compliance issues. So this money gets them back into, hopefully back into compliance.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And very quickly, in the budget report, it talks about towns with a population of less than 500, and in your enhancement request, it's less than 1,000.
It's 1,000. That's a mistake that was picked up somewhere, but it's always been 1,000.
Good catch, thank you. Director Henning, continuing questions, if you would, please.
All right, the next question was the additional FTEs, and I think I can answer it generally, but if a table is needed, I'm sure that Mr. Drury can do that for you. But we look at our FTE count as an agency-wide, okay? Because we do have the Division of Healthcare Finance, the Division of Health, and a Division of Environment. And so we've received additional funding opportunities, both from state, House Bill 23, new federal requirements, our high vacancy rate, and just some permitting backlog issues that we need to deal with. We moved positions from health and healthcare finance to environment. So our agency number is below what we have had historically. There are more positions in environment because they came from the other two divisions. But when you manage at the agency level, we have lowered our FTE count. So I hope that answers your questions. If not, I think Mr. Drury can provide that same information at a table.
That does help, and that, of course, there's some confusion because we have a portion, the environmental part of an agency.
Right.
So it is hard to.
So just for numbers, as an agency, we were approved to have 1,801 FTEs. Right now, we are budgeted, or what we're coming forward in this budget is 1,792 FTEs. So that is a net decrease of 19 FTEs for the agency.
All right. And do you have additional answers?
Yes, Ark River, the lining. Why we're not starting in Hamilton. This is really for the irrigation canals that come off the Ark River. And we are targeting Finney and Kearney County, sorry, Nebraska. And this is a pilot project, you know, because lining ditches in Colorado, they've been doing it over there to try to keep their water in their ditches. We don't know how much water we lose out of our canal systems to groundwater. So the first part of this is just to figure out how much water are we losing from our irrigation canals into groundwater? And then does it make sense to line them? But we have to answer the first question first, which is, are we losing millions, which I think we are, millions and millions of gallons of water out of irrigation canals, which should be put on the field, versus going into the groundwater and contaminating the aquifer below? So I would consider this a pilot project. We're going to see how much water we're losing, and if it makes sense to line those. If it does make sense to line them, we will have to do that over a period of time because it's too expensive to do it one time.
Did you have a question, Senator Dahl? We're up against the clock, but go ahead.
I still, and maybe we could talk later, Leo, I still don't understand why that can't be done in Hamilton County.
I'm not saying it's excluded. I'm just saying initially those were the two that we started.
That's fine. I don't want to be argumentative.
All right, and then the last question for Senator McGinn.
I'm going to ask you to hold that till tomorrow just because we are up against the clock and several members need to get to other committees, Mr. Director Henning.
All right.
I appreciate your willingness, and we may have additional questions tomorrow, but you will be first up tomorrow morning when we get started on the committee.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for being